Good morning. Some of you may not know me, but if you've sat next to me, or in front of me, or frankly within 5 or 6 rows of me in this building, you may have an idea about what I'm going to talk about today. You see, I love to sing in chapel. There's some debate about whether I sing well, but I think we can all agree that I sing loudly and with enthusiasm. This morning, I'd like to share 3 moments that explain what inspires me to sing in the way I do in this space. And maybe along the way, I'll convince a few of you to join me. I'll begin on a December evening, sometime in the mid-1980s. I sat with my family in a chapel on the campus of Harvard University, listening excitedly to a performance of the Christmas Revels, a Boston tradition that celebrates the music associated with the winter holidays of multiple faith traditions. At several points during the concert, the company invited the audience to participate. And at this moment, they were teaching us to sing Dona Nobis Pacem. This simple and beautiful piece of music is performed as a round, or I guess technically a canon. Is that correct, Mr. Humphreyville? Thank you. Sort of like Seek Ye First that we sing here in chapel. There are 3 parts or voices, and the first one goes like this. Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem. And the second one is Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. And the third and final voice is Dona nobis pacem. Dona nobis pacem. The audience gets divided into 3 groups. The first group starts the first part, and then just when they get to the second part, the second group joins in, and so on, until all 3 parts are being sung together. The 3 voices wove together in a breathtakingly beautiful manner, with each voice dancing gracefully and seamlessly in and out of the spaces left by the other 2. When the theater was alive and ringing with those intertwining ribbons of sound, a figure on stage gestured for us to lower our voices. As we sang together in hushed tones, the figure repeated the gesture, and then again. Soon I was singing so quietly that I could barely feel the breath escaping my lips, much less hear the sound of my own voice. Yet somehow, our voices, individually inaudible, were coming together, resonating through the warmly lit space between us. It was as if the music were somehow rising out of the air itself, filling our lungs and echoing through the cavities of our chests and the rafters of the building. To understand the impact of that moment on me, you need to know a little bit about me and the times I was living in. I would have been unrecognizable to most of you, with my long, dark hair parted in the middle and feathered back in the 80s pop culture equivalent of a mullet. Serious and sensitive to a fault, I was passionate about everything, from poetry to politics. This was the height of the 80s, and while that meant big hair and leg warmers, it also meant the Cold War and the vague but ever-present thought of nuclear destruction. In my nightmares, I was never chased by monsters, and I never showed up to school in my underwear. Instead, I watched nuclear warheads streaking across the suburban sky. Those dreams always ended the same way, with the sight of a distant flash and me frantically trying to calculate how many seconds remained before my home and my family would vanish into vapor. You see, those 3 Latin words, Dona nobis pacem, mean give us peace. We often wish for a world where we can live together in peace and harmony. You know the cliched phrase. While world peace seems like a noble dream, to me, peace just means doing our best not to murder each other, which sounds like a pretty low bar. But harmony, Now that's something to dream about. The text of that hymn speaks of peace, but the music itself embodies the ideal of harmony. The three voices in Dona Nobis Pacem could each stand on their own as compelling melodies. But when they combine, blending and harmonizing, the depth of their beauty becomes apparent. They do not tolerate one another, merely living in peace. Instead, they celebrate, they elevate, they glorify one another. To the young man in that theater, it seemed possible that the shimmering threads of that music, woven from the selfless whispers of 1,000 voices, could spill out through the city, across oceans, filling the space between great nations on the brink of war, echoing in the mouths and lungs and hearts of a distant people who wanted peace no less than I did. In the shared glow of that music, anything seemed possible, even peace, even harmony. In October of 2010, I stood near the back of the Immaculate Conception Church, just a few miles up the road in Newburyport. It was a Catholic church, and while I was raised in the Catholic tradition, my spiritual Facebook status had long since changed to, "It's complicated." However, on this morning I had come to the church for someone else, a former Brooks student who had just graduated in May. In the months before, this young man had been a standout in my AP chemistry class, learning and laughing along with an exceptionally talented group of peers. On that day, though, he lay still in a box at the front of the church, having taken his own life just weeks into his promising college career. This was the first time I had lost a student, at least in such an immediate and visceral way, though as many of you know, it would not be the last time. I'd been to funerals before, of course, but the sight of so many of his fellow students, young relatives, teenage cousins, mourning one of their own, their faces so bright, so brave, so young, above the despondent colors of their somber clothes, struck me as cosmically unnatural and wrong in a way that had me reeling. The church was packed, and while I knew that the sea of dark suits concealed the faces of a few colleagues and quite a number of current and former Brooks students, I'd come alone and had the uncomfortable feeling that I was surrounded by strangers. While the words of the service washed over me, almost unheard, I thought about those around me. I wanted to clasp their shoulders, to stare into their faces and ask them, how can this have happened? Was there something that I could have done to keep this young man alive and among us? I thought about the family at the front of the church, forced to grieve so publicly. I wanted to cry out to them, you know, don't you, that we loved him? That we love him still? I pondered these words that I would never utter until the church organ rumbled with the opening strains of the closing hymn, Amazing Grace. Though every note I sang struggled against choking sobs to escape my chest, somehow the comforting familiarity of those inspired words helped me to find my voice and sing, falteringly at first, but then more steadily. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. How sweet indeed that sound that brought a glimpse of beauty into that darkest of mornings, daring us to hope that in time we might seek and feel beauty once again. How sweet the sound of that beloved hymn that we shared that morning, breathing in and breathing out the music together, reminding me that this church full of strangers was bound together by more than just our common loss, but by the threads of love and shared humanity that any life leaves in its wake. As I felt my own voice rise and mingle with those around me, I could imagine our hymn stretching out to the bereaved family before the altar. I could feel the combined might of our voices, rendering our loving presence more real, more palpable, calling out, "We are here. We are here for you, for him, for each other. We are here, and as we sing together, so we can live through this together." The last of my musical moments occurred right here in this chapel. I was sitting nervously in those seats over there on my first day on the job as a teacher at Brooks School. It was the morning of September 10th, 2001. I'll let that date sink in for a moment. Some of you should ask me about my second day on the job sometime. The school had gathered for our opening chapel service, and I just listened to the head of school delivering an address that I found fresh and inspiring. To conclude the service, we stood to sing the school hymn, and I was delighted to see that many of the older students were preparing to sing it from memory without the need to open the hymnal. Months before, when I was deciding whether to come to Brooks to teach, I thought to reach out to a former colleague of mine who'd spent several years on the faculty. In an email, he shared his impressions of Brooks in a few pithy phrases. His description read something like this: a strong faculty, some gems, a few prunes. Brooks is a school where the students go to chapel and actually sing the hymns. This description was perfect for me because I immediately knew exactly what he meant by that last remark. While I understand the danger of making broad generalizations about adolescence, I think it's fair to say that during their high school years, many young people are understandably focused on forging their own identity and constructing a public persona. Showing too much enthusiasm for anything can feel risky. While it's probably okay to display excitement about sports or about your significant other, it may be seen as uncool to show passion for classical music, for drama, or the color pink, much less anything sanctioned by adults, like school, weekend activities, or chapel. While I imagine this is true to some extent in every school community, I've never been part of a school that bucks this trend more than Brooks. As a community, you students respect and celebrate one another's diverse backgrounds, talents, and passions like no other group I've been a part of. You've created an atmosphere where each of you can feel safe to share your excitement about the things you do and love with the confidence that your peers will recognize that your passions, different though they may be from anyone else's, are just tiny tongues of flame in the brilliant bonfire that illuminates the school from within. This is the school, after all, where I once watched the giant, muscular captain of the football team deliver an enthusiastic high five on the school meeting stage to the winner of the Latin Poetry Prize. Like the interlocking voices of Dona Nobis Pacem, through your counterpoint, you enrich, you amplify, and you complete one another. You harmonize. But back to the school hymn. None of my new colleagues chose to warn me about the shine! And as nervous as I was, I probably went airborne. I still don't know what that shine means or where the tradition came from, and I don't think I want to know. In fact, I've sworn never to type the word shine into the search bar of urbandictionary.com for fear of what I might find. But that first time I heard it, I knew instantly what it meant to me. It was the joyful noise that's spoken of in Psalm 98. It was the confirmation that I'd come to the right place, that I'd found the place where I could live and work and raise my family. The place where year after year I can stand before you at this pulpit, trembling with nervous excitement, looking out on a sea of faces that I can't help but love. There are lots of reasons to hesitate about singing in chapel. You may have misgivings about the religious implications. I get that. It's complicated. You may feel insecure about your singing voice, but please remember that by singing together in chapel, you demonstrate that your love, your care for one another, and your joy at being together in this remarkable place mean more to you than any adolescent fear of how others might see or judge you. When we sing together, when we shine together, we embody and celebrate all that is best about this great school. So, to paraphrase the wise words of Mavman, when the time comes, I hope you will join me, as you will, in the spirit of song. Make that joyful noise. You never know who you may be lifting up.